Thank you. Deborah Doctor with Disability Rights California.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to staff for the always excellent job putting together all these amazing amount of materials. I am legislative advocate for Disability Rights California. I'm representing people with disabilities throughout California, from birth to death, people of all ages. And as Kathy said, we're part of what seems like kind of a historic coalition. You have in front of you, I think, a letterhead that shows that all the stakeholders are literally on the same page. Our logos are on the same page. The counties, the unions, various disability and senior organizations. Overtime will not affect the majority of IHSS consumers. And for the majority of people, because their workers don't work that many hours. And for the majority of people, consumers, where they are affected, it's not a bad thing, especially if they're sharing a household with a provider who's going to be bringing in more income. But there are a very small number of consumers, and I can't tell you how many, but I would be surprised if it's even 10,000. It might be much less. And this includes people, children with the most severe disabilities, and the oldest seniors who are facing an immediate risk because of the limits that the legislature and the administration have put on the work week. And I'm speaking for those folks today who cannot be here to speak for themselves. And I am asking you to send a clear message today to those people and to the administration that it was never your intention to have overtime cause harm, and harm should not be done in your name. And that it was never your intention, and you'll hear more about this family. There's a woman who has to choose between taking care of her husband and her daughter. Her daughter's 27 years old with extreme developmental disabilities, and her husband is dying a long and painful death. They live in a very rural area. They have been on edge for almost a year and a half because they're being told that she cannot continue to care for both her husband and daughter and get paid for it by IHSS. They have to find another provider to do this care, regardless of whether there is another provider available for them. And all she wants to do, and all these providers want to do, is to keep doing this incredibly hard work at incredibly low wages. That's all they are asking, is for you to say they should be able to do that. Wait time is an excellent addition to this program. It makes sense that providers should get paid when they have to be waiting with an IHSS consumer at a medical appointment. What doesn't make sense is that the cost of that to a consumer who's already at the cap of their hours should be a provider having to say to them, well, I sat with you for 12 hours at the emergency room. I won't be able to bathe you or get you out of bed or feed you because we used up your hours because they're being taken out of your service hours. I don't think that was anybody's intent. It was never your intention that an elderly couple that we know of, both of whom have dementia and physical disabilities, have to go to a nursing home because the state of California is telling their adult son that he no longer can care for both of them because their hours add up to more than 66 a week. They are not going to accept another provider in their home. He can't go and get another job and leave them alone. He can't keep a roof over his head at 66 hours a week, and he has told us, and he means it, they will both go to a nursing home at incredible human and financial cost. Both of these examples are real. You'll hear more about the family that I mentioned. They just want to continue to do the work they've been doing, but they're being told they can't. They have been told they have to find other providers, despite there being no evidence that other suitable providers exist. You can change this. You can make sure that nobody goes to a hospital or a nursing home because of the limits that are being put on them for overtime. The purpose of IHSS, as you well know, is to keep people at home safely. And there is something fundamentally wrong when a new policy, which was supposed to help people, undermines that goal and puts them in danger. So we are asking for a targeted, tailored exception process so that when the health and safety of a person with a disability, whether it's a child or senior, is at risk, there can be an exception to these rules to let the providers continue to provide the loving care they have been. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Doctor. We have the honor of having an IHSS provider with us today from Placer County. Welcome, Olivia Ceballos Cardona. We welcome your testimony.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Olivia Ceballos. I am a UDW member from the town of Lincoln in Placer County, and I've been an IHSS home care provider since 2008. Originally, I only cared for my son Sean, who is 15 and lives with severe autism, and was also recently diagnosed with epilepsy. A year later, I began caring for my father-in-law, Mike Riberian. Mike is 81 years old and has chronic bronchitis, lung disease, vertigo, neuropathy, diabetes, high cholesterol, and since his wife died, he also lives with depression. He needs constant care throughout each day. Because of his condition, he needs a lot of care. I cook, clean, do his laundry, help him get around, and more. I'm recently divorced, but I'm still my father-in-law's home care provider. He is my family. He is depending on me for many things, like my son. Now, my son, Sean, my father-in-law, and I live together. My son has 283 hours, and my father-in-law has 82 IHSS hours each month. This means that my IHSS clients need my care 365 hours each month. And I'm happy to do it because I know that in-home care is the best option for them. Unfortunately, the new IHSS program rules only allows me to work 66 hours a week. Therefore, I will no longer be able to provide my son and my father-in-law with all of the care they need and continue to be compensated for it. We've been told to find another home care provider to work my son and my father-in-law's additional hours. And we've tried, but it's tough because my father-in-law speaks Farsi, and it's been impossible to find another home care provider in Placer County who speaks Farsi as well. It's also hard because very few providers want to work only 2 or 3 hours each day. I don't qualify for the categorical exemption because it is only for providers who are the parents or grandparents of 2 or more of their living IHSS clients. I urge you to hear my story and understand that we need an exemption that increases the maximum weekly hours for families who do not qualify for the categorical exemption. Doing so will protect providers and families like mine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Ballo, would you clarify one thing for me? You said that you can't work more than 66 hours a week, and what's the number of hours that you need to work for your 2 family members per week? What is the number of hours?
Like I said, my son has 283 hours, and my father-in-law gets 82.
Over 90. Over 90.
You need to work 90-plus hours
Yes.
per week, and you're being told to find another provider.
Yes, because he's not my son, my father-in-law, but he's my family.
Understood.
And I love him, and he's so happy with us, and we give him the care that he needs. Him and my son, my autistic son, have a very special bond together.
Thank
and
you.
They work so well. And if we bring somebody else, I mean, first of all, they're not going to give them the quality care. My son is going to be impacted because he's also autistic, and his routine is very important. And
Thank
he
you.
won't be happy with anybody else.
We're going to
Plus,
try to get
my
you some
father-in-law
answers.
he needs the constant care from me.
Thank you for your testimony. Stay here with us. We're going to have some questions for various departments and representatives, and we appreciate all that you're doing for your family and for our state. We're going to try to get some answers here today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Law, I know I owe you some time on the next item, and we're going to go back there soon. But on this item, is there anything from finance on this item?
Actually, I'm sorry. It's Yang Lee from Department of
sorry.
Finance.
Yeah, I'm
No,
sorry.
that was my other colleague.
I apologize.
She's not here today.
My apologies. I'm reading
Don't
my
worry
notes
about
here. So,
So on this
Mr.
issue,
Lee, sorry.
we don't have any position at the moment. We are reviewing the documents that were provided, the proposals provided by the advocates, but no position at the time being. So
Thank you. I apologize. My notes say that Fallen Law would be representing you.
yes, it was her initially. She's not feeling well today.
Please
so
accept my apology. Now I know you.
I do
We'll get it
accept it.
right. Thank you. Is there? I'm not going to say any names. Is there anyone from the LAO's office who wishes to speak on this issue?
Sure, Mr. Chair. Callie Freetech with the
You
LAO.
are in my notes, so
Yeah.
please, anything from the
Great.
LAO's office.
Overall, we would say that the agenda does a nice job at laying out all of the governor's proposals for IHSS. And on the coalition's proposal for FLSA, subcommittee staff has asked us to work with the department and with the coalition to understand the fiscal and policy implications of what the coalition is proposing. Right now, we're in the very early stages of understanding the coalition's proposal, and we would also note that the FLSA is very early on. Overtime came into effect February 1st, and so every day we are learning more and more about the implications of the policies that are currently in place. So as we work with the coalition and the department to understand the proposals, we're looking at three big things. We're looking at what the problems are that the coalition's proposals are trying to solve. We're looking at the fiscal impacts of the problems and the proposed solutions, and the overall programmatic implications of any of the proposed solutions that the coalition is putting forth. And so overall, we concur with the staff recommendation to hold this item open as we look into this, and we'll continue to work with the department and the coalition.
Thank you. Director Lightbourne, we'd like to see any response, reaction to the remarks and concerns expressed here today.
Certainly, Chair Thurman. First, I think we need to, let's talk a bit about the grace period issue. As Ms. Sendling expressed, it is a complicated implementation, but there's been a year of background information and preparation, et cetera. The state has fully funded the counties for implementation activities. The fact that Los Angeles, with over a third of the caseload, has literally only 5,000 errors in the first payroll is, to my mind, not alarming. Remember, we consider in the first couple of months any problems in the reporting, unless it's willful, obvious fraud. That statute remains in effect. But we consider any errors in people just not understanding how to do it to be just that. They're errors. And they are for the purpose of correction. This, as I say, this does not at this point strike me as anything beyond that which was anticipated when the statute was being developed. Another area that's I think of great importance is the question of the exemptions. So what we have been working towards is the definition of two categories of exemption. The first, which has been referenced as quote-unquote categorical, is essentially to try to address the issue of those parents who are caring for more than one severely disabled child with high hours, for whom the introduction of a new caregiver may be highly disruptive, verging on sort of not feasible. So parents, grandparents caring for children in that situation are exempted from the 66-hour week. The second area of exemption, which we've been clarifying with our counties over the last days and expect to issue guidance very, very shortly, is to address those situations where, and it has to obviously involve multiple consumers. The issue only arises if there are multiples, because the maximum number of hours an individual can have is 283 hours, a consumer, which is 66 hours. So in situations in which the situation is incurable, and I think the example used of a recipient of care who speaks a language that there is no available provider who can communicate would meet that standard of incurable. However, it is not, as we are framing it, a matter of based on the consumer's just the preference of who they want as a provider, but rather circumstances that cannot be mitigated by the availability of another provider. For that first exemption, the actual number that we're calculating is that 1,100 providers will meet the definition of the parent-grandparent caring for 2 or more children in their home. And for the incurable, there's really no way of defining it in advance. It is a case-by-case circumstance that will have to be identified to us and that we'll have to determine on a case-by-case basis. It's certainly the intention not to create any circumstance that cannot be mitigated and that would result in the institutionalization of a consumer. The third area regarding the wait time issue is problematic in this regard. The California statute and the construction of the program have a cap of 283 hours to essentially credit wait time as being outside of assessed hours, effectively increases the cap. That is not within the purview of either the budget or the existing construction of the program. And so it's something which is not contemplated in our program activity going forward. So, Ms. Carroll, would you care to add anything?
The only thing I would add is there's been a lot of issues about the work week hours and the utilization of the work week hours, and we have gone about providing direction, training, webinars, webcasts, tools to assist with how to do your timesheets. The only thing I understand that there's an issue to try to go towards a work week authorization versus a monthly. Problem with doing a work week authorization, half of the services in the program are assessed monthly, half are assessed weekly. There's no, I could write pros and cons on both approaches, but it would be a tremendous change to the program to go to weekly, and trying to make major changes in the program at the same time we have all these other issues. It's a concern from an operational aspect for us. The other issues that they've raised, like the 26-week timesheet process, major expenses to the system, and probably a year to implement some of those activities. And one of the questions that people ought to consider is the cost that it would take to do this. Is this what we want to invest the money in, or are there other changes to the program that would be more beneficial in the future? Because even if we were to start today, it would take us over a year to make some of the changes they're talking about. And then finally, on the grace period, Director Lightbourne's addressed it. But at this point in time, from a program operations aspect, it would be quite difficult to inform all the providers and the recipient about a delay. I mean, it will cost, it's roughly $1 million for every mailing we have to make. And we've made several this year in order to keep people informed. So our budget is pretty depleted at this point in time. I think we would have considerable confusion trying to figure out what is being implemented and what is not. Thank
I'm going to call public comment in a moment. I think they're going to be examples, but I do want to do a redirect on one of the examples that we heard from our principal witness. And before I do that, I do. We don't normally get the pleasure of having Assemblymember Brown sit here next to me on at this committee, but she does give me the pleasure of sitting next to her on the Assembly floor, and I'm glad to have you here today. And she's very concerned about these interests and issues. Thank you for being here today. Director Lightbourne, I'll start with you. As the example, as I understood it, that I heard from our witness today, you reference, if someone speaks another language, they can make a request based on language preference. And so I think I heard an example where the individual served is saying that he has a language preference and he wants to have a provider who may not be a blood relative, but is kin nonetheless, right? We spend a lot of time together, and we talk about, in our work with foster youth, we talk about fictive kin, right? Sometimes family are the people who we choose to be our family, and sometimes the family who we create treat us better than the family that we were born into. And so here we have an individual who has shared with us that the rules are blocking her ability to serve someone who she defines as kin, and the person served defines as kin, and it is having an impact on two consumers. I admit I don't understand all that has to happen, and I admit that there are probably administrative difficulties in how to maneuver this. I do not want to minimize that, but I have this saying that I say, let us not let what's administrative get in the way of what's good for the people that we serve. And every single one of you has said that this is a program that keeps people out of costly care, out of institutions, out of nursing homes. So this is the part where I get like, whatever it takes to make it happen, let's make it happen. What say you, sir?
First, I say that the issues in the example created are not administrative at all. Rather, there are three things, if I could frame it this way, Mr. Chair. First, when the legislature and the administration and the unions and the advocacy groups and the stakeholders looked at this issue at the outset, there was a conscious decision made then that said we could not construct the program going forward in the environment of paid overtime in a way that simply said the consumer's choice is absolutely dispositive. That was an understood statement. Rather, what was said was that there would be payment of overtime, but within the system of caps and, if you will, sort of program and cost controls. In the example used and the sort of example I was using as an incurable situation, if the gentleman, the father-in-law, speaks a language that there is no provider around who can speak, then that's not a matter of language choice. That's a matter of the consumer can't be served unless we make an exception for the only identified possible provider who speaks the language. In terms of the father-in-law, the gentleman, preferring to be served, we're back to the consumer choice question. Once we say it is purely the consumer's preference, then the entire construction of California's implementation of the FLSA rule ends. It is inconsistent with everything else.
So put another way, does that mean if the consumer says that they prefer someone because they're comfortable with them, that they have them, or does it mean the opposite?
No, it means that if the provider would exceed the 66 hours because they are serving more than one provider, if a provider says, well, I prefer this person, so I want them to have more than 66 authorized hours, they cannot do that.
And if the consumer says, I want to have this person, and those set of circumstances mean that it puts someone over 66 hours, what do our regulations say on that?
Our regulations say that then the county process, which is now underway, which is establishing the workweek agreements, have to establish for which consumers the provider is going to work which number of hours. And if that means that for a given consumer that they will not have their fully authorized hours met, then a replacement provider has to be identified and brought in, either for the full number of hours that they're authorized or for the increment, the margin of hours.
And if a child and a grandfather say they want the same person who's been their provider to be their provider at the levels that they need?
It would, if the situation was not curable by the introduction of another provider. Let's say two possibilities in this scenario. If the grandfather and the child are living in the same home, and the child, as described, is autistic, a close relative who is autistic, and the ability of that child is to have another person enter the residence, if that is not possible, or if they're not living together, but the grandfather's language means that there is no available provider, then that becomes an incurable situation. And I see the path to how we mitigate that. It's not an administrative problem at all.
Got it.
But if it's simply a matter of this is the preference of the adult in the situation, then the underlying construction of the statute does not permit it.
I appreciate the care which you are trying to articulate this. I can tell that this is not easy, and it's complicated, and it's nuanced. And it seems like everything in Sacramento is nuanced. And so that we don't spend a lot of time on this, I'd like to ask this. If there's someone from your staff who can work with Ms. Avalos on her case of what might be a case of first instance, while our departments are working out all of these cases of first instance, but that's in the meantime, the grandchild and the grandparent don't go without care from their preferred person. Can we have someone from your staff work with her today?
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then we're going to hear from the witnesses, because I can tell that this is going to be an ongoing conversation for us to try and figure out how we do this going forward in a way where we just don't split up people from the people who've been their providers because of some what might feel like an arbitrary cap. I get your position, but I want to make sure that the net outcome of our policies and regulations is that we don't split people up from their preferred provider. If the consumer says, I'm comfortable with this individual, they've been my provider, that carries a lot of weight for me. Thank you, sir. Let's hear from the public. Please stick around. I think we've got you for the next couple panels, so thank you. Public comment, again, 1 minute each. We want to hear from everyone, and we welcome your testimony.
Chairman Thurman and your committee today for your addressing several important issues. One, of course, is the restoration of the 7%. It's nice to have that back for our hours, and also the complicated discussion over overtime. My caregiver says, I'll believe it when I see it on my check. So we'll hope it comes soon. The third issue that I'm vitally concerned is the share cost. I currently receive Social Security in an amount of $1,486 a month. I receive aid and attendance. I was a former officer in the Air Force, and I receive aid and attendance of $1,001 a month. And I receive a small check, retirement check from DuPont Company for $141. That's a total of $2,628. My share of costs is $1,301, or approximately 50% of the total amount that I receive. I think that something's got to be done about this share of costs. I have to pay for rent, I have to pay for food, I have to pay for transportation, credit card debt, which I just don't think I could ever get out from under, and transportation. I think that something should be done to take care of this share of costs, put a zero on it, and let the legislature take care of it. Thank you, sir, for your time, and I appreciate being here. Instead, I live in Marin County. I'm chairman of the Public Authority of Marin County, IHS. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On this issue, we are asking for public comment on the issue of overtime implementation. If you're not interested in speaking on that issue, because all three of our issues have to do with IHSS, we will not ask you to get out of the line. However, if you're not going to speak on the overtime implementation, if you're going to speak on another part of IHSS, we would ask you just to speak this one time. And we're not going to ask anybody to get out of the line. But this is, if you wish, to speak on IHSS overtime.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Michelle Rousey. I'm the chair of the Public Authority Advisory Board for IHSS in Alameda County. And with the overtime, I'm really concerned about the notification of the providers and the consumers of this. And, you know, there's trainings going on in my county, and the participation in them is not been what we would like, because the notifications either didn't go out or haven't gone out before the implementation of the trainings. So I'd really like to make sure that, you know, if we're going to impose a date that we have a deadline for the implementation, and that they are allowed a grace period, that it be done so that the workers don't get kicked off the program. Thank you.
Thank you.